They were the perpetuation of the secret schools of architecture, known as the Dionysian artificers in Greece, the Vitruvian Collegia in Rome, and the famous architects called the Comosine builders, who had their refuge in Lake Como. These were all initiate schools from antiquity, concealing the secrets of human regeneration under the story of architecture. And here's one group of guilds. Now let us pass for a moment to another group. And this is the group of the chemists. The doctors, the chemists, and those who had to do with research in metals, metallurgy, and things of that nature. All who touch fire as a means of working the elements of their craft were bound together. And this mysterious body of chemists, although it did not build cities at the foot of cathedrals and do things of that nature, was an integrated body. And it was also in close relation to the crafts of the builders. Now the next thing that I want to bring up in connection with the alchemical tradition is to try to orient what basically alchemy stood for. Generally and broadly, we know what it meant. We know that by transmutation was implied regeneration. We also know that the symbolism of alchemy was exact. Why? Because it was based upon an exact science, chemistry. We also realize that as we go into it, that perhaps the nearest parallel we can find to it in our common experience in the modern world is yoga. In other words, alchemy was an esoteric discipline. It was a discipline based upon an exact science of human regeneration. Now, just as in almost all of the exact sciences of antiquity, it is assumed that the keys were lost. The second point that I think we should try to realize and understand is that the alchemists were not only interested in the regeneration of man, but in the restoration of the philosophic empire as established in the concept of Plato. This restoration of the philosophic empire was to be undertaken by a broad political program. So alchemy penetrated and permeated practically every political and social state of the world, extending as far as China, throughout India, throughout the Near East, and even extending into the Central and South American areas of the Western Hemisphere, where chemistry had reached a fairly high degree of proficiency. Now, from this general survey, which is naturally exceedingly brief and which only touches a few of the interesting phases of it, I want to try to start a series of rather brief definitions of some of the elements of alchemy as we have to contact them and work with them in the future. First of all, alchemy, as we say, has three steps or degrees of adepts. One being the adept himself, one the illuminate, and one the initiate. It likewise had three great works or achievements with which it was concerned primarily under the title or general collective term, the magnum opus, or the great work. The illuminist, who was between these two, was identified with the search for the universal medicine. So we have the three steps in relationship to the three grades. The creation of the stone being the work of the adept. The discovery of the universal medicine being the work of the illuminate. And the transmutation of base metals being the work of the initiate. These three then represented the keys to the works of the grades, or differentiated the labors of the three classes or orders of alchemists. So we then consider the creation of the universal medicine, which was the work of the illuminists. Now, how is this universal medicine to be found? The basis of this medicine goes back into a very ancient symbolism, and that is the production of the spirits of metals and the spirit of gold, which can be captured in oil. The gold, which is gathered for the grape, is the symbol of mystical as mystical ecstasy or the mystical experience in man. For this experience gathers the available consciousness. And we remember that the Christos, or the symbol of the illuminator and the initiator, refers to himself by saying, I am the vine. This mysterious vine of life, the symbol of the Dionysian Eucharist, and later brought into the church, is therefore closely associated, as with the grace, with illumination. The universal medicine is the mystical experience arising within the individual. It is the basis of the healing of himself and of all nations, and the bringing about of the power of the healing of all sickness. For sickness is healed by the mystery of grace. And in alchemy, the great and the grace are identical in meaning. So we have here a heavy mystical overtone, overshadowing the physical or alchemical symbolism as we generally accept it. Now, you remember in the last series when we were talking about yoga, I pointed out the importance of recognizing that the human soul corresponds with the orbits of the seven planets, and that the soul of man represents this field of the seven cardinal virtues, the seven deadly sins, which reflect downward into the physical phenomena of the seven liberal arts and sciences. Therefore, the second part of the work of the illuminist, takes place within the soul, and the bottle it must contain the universal medicine. Now, this universal medicine is achieved through the mystery of the seven parts of the human soul, a doctrine which originated probably in Egypt, where there is specific reference to the seven souls of man and how they in turn influence the destiny of his life. Now, in the transmutation of metals, another important point was brought out, and that is that the outer bodies of the metals are irreconcilable. Therefore, that you cannot force iron and lead together and cause them to accomplish an alchemical mystery. You can fuse them to produce an alloy of some kind, but you cannot force them together to release their own spiritual power. Therefore, before metals or elements can be given a new birth in the spirit, they must die. And the death of elements, the destruction of minerals, the complete elimination of the formal nature of the forms of things is part of the alchemical procedure. Therefore, alchemy was a death and a resurrection, and comes very, very close to philosophical symbolism as we come to this level. All of the outer bodies and structures of metals must die before the spirits of these metals can unite to form the mysterious transmuting agent, which is called the red lion. For every one of the forms of nature must die before the life within that form can be liberated or released. Therefore, alchemy then approaches the problem of human intelligence, and it says that before the individual can become wise, he must destroy the false mind, which presumes to possess knowledge. He must destroy opinions before facts can come. He must tear down old walls before he can build a new house. And in the doctrines of the alchemical mysteries, it was first necessary to destroy the personality or the individuality of metals before they could be brought together to form the transmuting agent. Now, in the transmuting agent itself, called the red lion, or the powder of rejection, which was one of the great symbols of alchemy, the master was said to carry, particularly Elias Adepta, who was Elias the artist, that the master carried with him a little box which contained the powder of projection, and that one grain of this powder would transmute into pure gold, 100,000 times its own weight in base metals. Here we are obviously in the presence of an advanced type of symbolism, because obviously the power of projection represents consciousness itself, all on the level of knowledge, truth, which transforms ignorance. and consciousness itself, which can transform body up to 100,000 times its own weight. Therefore, the power of projection is consciousness itself, by means of which all base substances can be transformed or changed. The red lion is the symbol in alchemy of illumination, the mysterious enlightenment from within, which is the rebirth of the soul of metals. This illumination, according to alchemy, was achieved through the blending of 7 arts and sciences, which were the 7 sacred arts and sciences of the ancients.
Delta, the name of the 4th letter of the Greek alphabet. In form, it is a triangle and was considered by the ancient Egyptians a symbol of fire, and also of God. In the Scottish and French systems, and also that of the Knights Templar, the triangle or delta is a symbol of the unspeakable name. And we go back a little further, ladies and gentlemen, INRI, Jesus, Nazarenus Rex, Udiorum, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, the inscription which was placed upon the cross of the Savior. In the Philosophical Lodge, they represent fire, salt, sulfur, and mercury. In the system of the Rosicrucians, they had a similar use, Igni Natura Renovatur Integra, meaning literally, by fire, nature is perfectly renewed. This idea is also found in the degree of Knights Adepts of the Eagle or of the Sun. Remember, fire is connected to Delta. Remember that they burn their enemies to purify the soul so that the enemies will not come back after them.
The instruction then passes to hands-on lab work in melting and preparing metals such as quicksilver, which is mercury, copper, lead, and of course gold. At the end of this lengthy preparation, Isis exclaims, "Now realize the mystery, my son, the drug, the elixir of the widow." Most people would be sneaking around looking for some kind of a hallucinogenic potion to take. It's a drug of the mind. It's called knowledge of the secret. It holds great power. They're screwing with your mind.